I am the real daughter of the imperial family. The fake daughter replaced me in the king's bed, and I quickly became the queen consort of the tyrant. But the tyrant not only died out of lack of heirs, but he also died young. Therefore, the concubines who had no sons were forced to die along with him. And I was born with natural fertility. After marrying the weak King Wu, I gave birth to a very healthy son. When King Wu ascended to the throne, I became his queen. Who would have thought that, when I opened my eyes again, the fake princess had already married the king of Wu, while I ended up becoming the concubine of the tyrant. The tyrant seemed indifferent, showing no intention of favoring me at all. I silently complained in my heart, although the emperor isn't suitable for this role, I still need to have a child as soon as possible. The indifferent tyrant suddenly looked up at me. I knelt outside the doors of the emperor's bedroom, standing in line with a group of palace women, waiting for the tyrant's call. Xu Jiahui, the daughter of Xu Shangshu from the Ministry of Household Affairs, was just brought inside, but she was taken out within less than half an hour. No one dares to discuss what offense was made against the Empress Xu Jiahui, because the tyrant is capricious in his moods. He can kill anyone who doesn't please him. The daughter of the Minister of War, who was sitting right in front of me, Song Jiyu, suddenly fainted from fright. The eunuch quickly pulled her down from the scene. Outside the palace, one could hear the sound of needles falling to the ground. Everyone was too afraid to breathe loudly. I couldn't help but scold myself in my mind. Sure enough, he's a tyrant. Even the way he treats his concubines is so abnormal. No wonder he lived so short a life. The gate of the dormitory hall suddenly opened, and a bright yellow figure stepped out with great strides, scanning the surroundings. Who was speaking just now? All the palace women and eunuchs were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground in fear. The eunuch chief spoke boldly, "Your Majesty, no one has spoken yet." I silently muttered to myself, that dog emperor is old enough already, yet his ears still don't work properly. There's no sound at all here? The tyrant stepped down with great strides, his tall figure standing in front of me, against the light. I stared at his delicate, white feet, too afraid to look up. A thin hand grabbed my chin, forcing me to raise my head. This was the first time I observed the appearance of the tyrant Xiaomingya from such close-up distance. Under that imposing and intimidating demeanor, there was a face as beautiful as spring flowers, and a pair of eyes as bright as stars. Damn it, this tyrant looks much better than that King Wu. Everyone says that King Wu is incredibly handsome and unparalleled. But clearly, the tyrant is the most handsome man among them. Xiaomingya stared at my tightly closed mouth, silent. Suddenly, he laughed. "You are the daughter of whom?" Although I don't know how the tyrant noticed me, I answered honestly, "I am the daughter of the Prime Minister, Jiyu Zhao Zhao." Xiaomingya pondered for a while, then said, "You should go with me inside. Stay here tonight to serve me." As I watched the of the tyrant fade away, I couldn't help but feel a bit puzzled. I heard that in her previous life, the beautiful Jiyu Wanning managed to win the favor of the tyrant by singing and dancing. But in this life, I haven't even had the chance to perform yet. Or maybe the target of that tyrant is actually the daughter of my worthless father, Prime Minister Jiyu? I was served by palace women, while enjoying a rose bath in the side room of the emperor's bedroom. Thinking about the time when I will be able to sleep with the lover, a sense of anticipation begins to arise in my heart. The short-lived tyrant has a beautiful face. I wonder what his figure looks like. If his figure is also good, then I won't be at a loss at all. There was a noise at the door. Xiaomingya, wearing a moon-white sleeping robe with intricate dragon patterns embroidered on it, was staring at me intently without blinking an eye. I hurriedly grabbed a bathrobe from beside me, trying to cover up the exposed body before me. Then, I bowed respectfully, "May the emperor live long and prosper." But inside my heart, I scream wildly, "That's really a horrible dresser. He definitely looks better in white than in yellow." I'll have to take a look at what he's wearing underneath later. Xiaoming coughed once in the night. Without making a sound, he walked around me and sat down on the small couch by the window, reading a book in silence. I washed myself clean, put on a cool sleepwear, and followed behind her. With a polite voice, I said, "Your Majesty, every moment spent together in the spring night is precious. Please allow me to serve you and help you rest." Xiaoming didn't even lift his eyes. "You go sleep first." Ah, the tyrant really isn't good at that aspect at all. Otherwise, how could I, a beautiful woman like me, sit there without causing any trouble? Should I suggest that the Imperial Medical Clinic should send over a pot of warm-hearted wine? But will saying something like this really hurt his pride? Xiaomingya looked up at me deeply, as if he wanted to say something but held back. "Since I'm not sleepy at all, then let's go catch mosquitoes." I widened my eyes and said, "Don't we have incense in the palace?" Xiaoming laughed coldly. "I don't like the smell of incense. But your movements are actually more pleasant to smell. That dog emperor definitely did it on purpose to cause trouble for me." Xiaoming spent the entire night reading books. As a result, I had to deal with countless mosquitoes all night. When the daylight came, I entered the court with 2 dark circles under my eyes, ready to face the tyrant. Xiaomingya seems to be in a good mood tonight. Damn it. Can this be blamed on me for being too impatient last night? After all, 3 years later, all those concubines who have no sons will be buried together with their husbands. I used to be the real princess who had been living in the palace of the Prime Minister for over a decade. But when I returned, the fake princess became the favorite of my parents. I have become a source of embarrassment for everyone in the imperial family. Everything owned by Jiyu Wanning is of the highest quality. Yet I have to live in hardship in the imperial palace, like a common servant. Moreover, Jiyu Wanning constantly humiliates me. After the decree was issued to allow me to enter the palace in my previous life, everyone assumed that it would be inappropriate for me to do so. Therefore, I was quickly married off to Xiaoming Chen, the king who was known to be ill and weak. In contrast, Jiyu Wanning was chosen to replace me as the crown princess and became a noble imperial wife. If it weren't for the difficulties faced by the royal descendants, and if the tyrant were to die out quickly due to lack of heirs, then I wouldn't have given birth to the only dragon offspring of the royal family. In that case, King Wu would truly not be able to claim the throne. Unfortunately, King Wu was not the right man to be my husband. He appointed me as queen just to exploit my last trace of reproductive value. In the end, a cup of poisoned wine brought me to my death. In this lifetime, Jiyu Wanning managed to marry the king of Wu first. She hoped to become the queen and rule over the world with the help of the king of Wu. It's simply a delusional fantasy. As long as I can give birth to the dragon child of Xiaomingya as soon as possible. Once he dies, I will become the empress. King Wu has no chance of ascending to the throne again. According to royal traditions, the daughter of a high-ranking official who enters the palace as a consort can return home to visit her family after the first night of marriage. Although I really had to fight off mosquitoes all night, in the eyes of outsiders, the daughter of the Jiyu family was given immense favor from the emperor. For 7 days straight, the emperor kept me waiting to be allowed to sleep with him. Fighting off mosquitoes. So, I can also visit the Prime Minister's residence to see my family. I specifically asked someone to find out the date when Jiyu Wanning will be returning to her mother's home. I chose a date that happens to fall on the same day. What I didn't expect was that Xiaomingya actually decided to go with me, which is quite rare. The Jiyu family has raised a daughter like you. Naturally, I should take a look to see what secrets lie behind this. I don't understand what the tyrant is saying, but seeing the Jiyu family members kneeling on the ground makes me feel very happy. It seems that marrying a tyrant does have some advantages. Now, those of you who look down on me, will surely have to submit to my rule. Xiaoming didn't know what was going on, He refused to stand up for a long time. He doesn't call for me to stand up, and I'm happy to see that he doesn't bother to remind me at all. Ji Yuaning, kneeling among the crowd, suddenly rolled her eyes and fainted. I couldn't help but complain in my mind, she's trying to act like she's unconscious again. Every time, she uses this trick to make me disgusting to my own parents. I wonder if the tyrant will also dislike me because of this. Ah, well, then I'll have to ask for mercy. Your Majesty, perhaps. Xiaomingya interrupted me and said, "Everyone, stand up. Since the Queen of Wu is not in good health, she should stay in the sun for a while. She can come inside when she wakes up." I can't help but want to applaud. Tell me, is this a tyrant? There's no other king more wise than him. Xiaomingya slightly raised the corner of his lips. Ji Yuaning finally woke up, with a face full of jealousy as she looked at me. I was too impolite. I saw that my sister was in a position of superiority, yet I didn't show any affection towards her at all, just like I did in the household. I was very upset. The Prime Minister certainly didn't dare have any thoughts about the tyrant, so he turned his anger towards me. Once in power, one becomes very influential. There's not even a trace of sisterly affection among them. Such women truly don't deserve to be part of the royal family. Damn it, they raised me from birth, but their hearts were already turned away from me. Back in the mansion, they didn't even consider me a family member. Now, they still want to try to make me look good in front of that tyrant. He glanced at Xiaomingya, then said thoughtfully, "The Prime Minister has a point. The Queen of Wu is disrespectful to her elder sister. She certainly doesn't deserve to be the Queen of Wu. She must copy the rules about women's morality 800 times before she's allowed to leave the house." Everyone looked at the tyrant in surprise. Ji Yuaning was so angry that her eyes turned red. All she could do was to express her gratitude through words. Before leaving, Ji Yuaning whispered in my ear, "Madam Zhao, you may seem powerful now, but I know that the Emperor never really touched you at all. It seems like he shows you great favor, but in reality, he is merely fearing my father. But I'm different. Although the King of Wu is currently useless, his good fortune still lies behind him." I watched with indifference as Ji Yuaning acted in a foolish manner, taking unnecessary risks. It seems that my guess was correct, she too is a reincarnation who has returned to this world. I also felt a bit anxious about my own situation. Even if the weak and sickly King Wu has no descendants in this life, once the tyrant dies, I still have to die along with him, right? On the carriage returning to the palace, when we passed by the pharmacy, I asked to stop and went down to get something. When I came back, I had a small porcelain bottle in my hand. It's the most effective aphrodisiac around. It's said that even men who are not very attractive can still last for a while with it. Tonight, I must get the tyrant under my control. Xiaoming's hand, which was used to flipping through the pages at night, suddenly stopped. Otherwise, in 3 years, when the king ascends to power, the poor tyrant will die miserably, with not even a child left to remember him. Xiaomingya's face suddenly turned pale. "Your Majesty, do you feel unwell?" "Oh no, the tyrant can't stand it anymore, right? I don't even have time to give birth yet." Xiaomingya gritted his teeth, snatched the small porcelain bottle from my hands, and threw it out of the car window. "Tonight, I will show you whether I can do it or not." This night, there were no mosquitoes to be fought, and no other ladies in the palace lined up to wait. After calling for water 3 times throughout the night, my voice became as weak as that of a mosquito. It seems that the tyrant isn't completely ineffective after all. But why didn't he favor any of his concubines? And during his reign, he didn't have any heirs either. The next morning, the tyrant went to attend the court. The Empress Dowager summoned me to the Sinning Palace. As soon as I reached the door, I heard the laughter coming from Ji Yuaning and King Wu inside. If you come to the palace more often, I will be very happy. King Wu is truly affectionate and kind-hearted. He is even more like my son than the emperor. As soon as I entered, the laughter and voices inside suddenly ceased. The Empress Dowager sat in the main seat, glancing at me once, then ordered a bowl of baizi soup to be brought to her. The emperor is too busy with state affairs. As a concubine, you shouldn't try to seduce the emperor and distract him from his duties. I heard that you stayed with the emperor all night last night. That's unacceptable. Quickly drink the medicine to prevent pregnancy. The emperor isn't yet ready to have children. I was completely shocked. In my previous life, I entered the palace as a commoner. Every time I saw the Empress Dowager, I always thought of her as a majestic and authoritative woman. I never expected that she actually refused to allow the tyrant to have children. Ji Yuaning stood up and brought the bowl of medicine to me. Sister, the Empress Dowager has such a kind heart. You should drink it anyway. After all, in the Empress Dowager's mind, the son of the King of Wu is her own grandson. She even rewarded me with a lot of medicines that can help with conception and promote pregnancy. I watched coldly as Ji Yuaning held the medicine in her hands. She also looked at me with determination. In this lifetime, the young prince must be born by me. You better take this abortion medicine. Maybe after the emperor passes away, I can still try to get some mercy for you, so that you can die a little more peacefully. I sneered, then raised my hand to spill the hot liquid. The boiling liquid splashed all over Ji Yuaning. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she slapped the table in frustration. Dare it! Wan Ning tried to help you with the medicine. How dare you hurt her? It seems you've chosen to suffer instead of drinking the offered wine. Come here, and hit her stomach until there's blood coming out. Several thick-limbed old women stepped forward and helped me up. The eunuch suddenly announced, "Your Majesty has arrived." Although we always scold him as a tyrant, in times like this, we still see him as a savior. However, the Empress Dowager ordered people to silence me. She spoke first. "Emperor, this concubine of yours is disrespectful to me. She even insulted me. She deserves to be punished properly, so that the behavior of the concubines in the palace can be corrected. That witch is being a hypocrite. It's clearly you who want to abort the son of the tyrant. I really don't understand this. After all, they are all sons of the Empress. So why is there such a preference shown towards the King of Wu? It seems like the tyrant isn't even considered a relative at all. It seems that the tyrant's moods are unpredictable, and it's because he isn't valued by his own mother. It's unfortunate that after his sudden death in the past life, the queen didn't even shed a single tear. Instead, she happily appointed King Wu as the new emperor. I actually feel a little sympathetic towards the tyrant now. Seeing that Xiao Mingya's face was getting darker by the minute, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but smile. Emperor, perhaps it would be better to send this concubine to the Department of Punishments, so that she can serve as a role model for the other concubines. Xiao Ming sneered and said, "The Empress Dowager is indeed very considerate towards her son." Seeing that the tyrant seemed to agree with the Empress' words, the King of Wu also suggested, "My brother is always respectful to his mother. Those women who disrespect their mothers should be executed as punishment." Ji Yuaning stood by, clapping his hands in admiration, laughing so hard that he couldn't stop. I'm afraid Princess Zhao cannot be moved at all. She already carries my child in her womb. Not only were the people present stunned, I too was shocked. But it was our first time last night, so how could it happen so quickly? Xiao Ming looked at me silently. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I felt like his gaze contained a hint of disdain. The Empress' face was extremely dark. "Don't you just had sex with her last night? Did the Emperor really deceive me, just to favor that wench?" Xiao Mingya shook his head and said, Xiao Zhao and I have been in love with each other since the beginning. On the day she first entered the palace, we already had sex together. The tyrant really has great acting skills when it comes to lying. He's not much worse than those concubines. But he lied in order to save me. From that perspective, he seems like a decent person after all. Xiao Mingya glared at the woman who was holding me back. She was so scared that she let go of me immediately. I took out the cloth I had stuffed in my mouth, and threw myself into Xiao Mingya's arms. Tilda, Your Majesty Tilda? To be honest, the emperor looked quite attractive back then. I really couldn't bear to see him die of illness 3 years later. Xiao Mingya first smiled slightly, then his expression became serious again. He turned around and looked at King Wu. King Wu has been quite idle lately. From now on, he shouldn't keep bringing King Wu's wife to the queen's presence, causing unnecessary rumors. The weak-willed King Wu felt like he was shorter than others when faced with the powerful Xiao Mingya. He was too shy to speak back, and the Empress Dowager beside him became angry first. What are you saying, Emperor? I really like Chenna and her husband. Why not invite them into the palace to spend time with me? Xiao Ming sneered, next time, if the Empress Mother decides not to trouble Zhao Zhao anymore, then the King and Queen of Wu can talk as much as they want. Since Zhao Zhao has contributed greatly in raising the royal heir, I have decided to promote her to the rank of Empress Consort Zhao. From now on, she will no longer need to attend any formal ceremonies. Ji Yuaning, who was standing behind the King of Wu, seemingly casually said, Sister, this pregnancy came about suddenly. Have you ever consulted a medical expert to check it out? Maybe there's something wrong. The Empress Dowager seemed to be suddenly reminded of something. Her gaze at my belly had a hint of malice in it. Yes, please call the imperial physician. I want to check whether there really is a dragon fetus in Princess Zhao's belly. Xiao Mingya protected me behind him. Zhao Zhao's pregnancy can only be seen by Sun Shini. If anyone else were to see it and make mistakes, would they be able to bear the consequences? The Empress was so shocked by Xiao Mingya's rude behavior that she couldn't say anything for a while. Surely, no one in the palace dared to go to the Emperor and ask to see the pregnant wife's belly, right? The old witch is furious. Who told you to favor the younger son over the eldest son? I never thought that the tyrant and I would end up in the same situation, both having families that favor one child over the other. Seeing that the emperor protected me like this, Ji Yuaning's expression became even more ugly. When Xiao Mingya led me away, he turned around to look at Ji Yuaning once. I heard that Queen Wu's daughter is merely a adopted daughter of the Prime Minister's family. An adopted daughter should have the awareness of being her adopted daughter. She has repeatedly caused trouble for her elder sister, so she will be punished by being given a beating. Later, I will have the members of the royal family change the information on your identity card back to adopted daughter, so that everyone will know your true status. Ji Yuaning fell to the ground, and the King of Wu also looked very upset. Among the royal family, status and background are of utmost importance. Ji Yuaning always regarded herself as a noble woman from the imperial family, but in reality, she was simply a daughter of a commoner. If the jade plaque is modified, the entire Wu family palace will be brought to shame. Returning to the emperor's bedroom, I couldn't help but feel somewhat worried. I can only honestly say, Your Majesty, it seems that there are no children in my womb at all. Xiao Ming personally pulled down the bed canopy. When he turned around to look at me, his eyes had a strange look. Therefore, we need to make sure we make the most of every moment. Before I had even had time to carefully ponder the meaning of Xiao Ming's words, I was already being carried onto the dragon's bed. It seems I need to buy some kind of medicine for the tyrant. If this continues, I won't be able to bear it anymore. Xiao Mingya's face turned dark, and soon followed by even more intense storms and rains. Everyone in the harem knows that I am pregnant. All of my food must be tested for toxicity by the imperial medical officials before it can be consumed. But on this day, after taking the pregnancy-relieving medicine delivered by the Imperial Medical Bureau, I suddenly began to experience severe abdominal pain. The Empress Dowager rushed into my bedroom at the right time, along with Ji Yuaning. Dare to mock the concubine. A false pregnancy would cause chaos in the court. I have decided to select a prince from among the royal family, in order to stabilize the government. I was shocked and couldn't help but ask, Your Majesty is in the prime of your life. Even if I do not conceive children, he will still have his own biological sons. Why must he be chosen from among the royal family? The Empress Dowager smiled coldly. Whether the emperor can have children or not, I know better than anyone. Come here, and take the concubine Zhao away. Could it be that the Empress Dowager poisoned the tyrant with a drug that would cause him to have no descendants? That's why the tyrant never had any children at all? Stop, Empress Mother. I have already said that Empress Zhao is pregnant, and she shouldn't be disturbed. Xiaoming arrived again at the right time. The Empress Dowager sneered. Even if such a thing really happened, she would have surely taken the wrong medicine and miscarried. Emperor, for the sake of the stability of the kingdom, I have already chosen a successor for you. We will set a date for his coronation as the crown prince, so that the people can be relieved of their concerns. King Wu entered with a 2-year-old child in his arms. Behind him, several ministers stood outside the palace. My lord, this is the grandson of the Yuyang prince, chosen by the empress. His parents have passed away, so he is perfect for being adopted by you. This mother and son really have a cruel mind. They want to take someone else's baby as their emperor. In the end, won't the world still be in their hands? It seems that even if I give birth to dragon offspring, my fate will remain the same. It's better not to become a tyrant at all. Xiaomingya seemed to smile with a contented expression. I suddenly thought again, even if I have to die, I will wait until my son grows up and becomes able to rule on his own. Then, I can directly become the Empress Dowager. Xiaomingya's expression quickly turned gloomy. Very well, Empress Mother. Is it really true that the dragon fetus in Princess Zhao's belly has disappeared? Someone, summon the renowned physician's son to the palace. He should be able to ensure Princess Zhao's safety by checking her pulse. Dr. Sun arrived quickly. After taking my pulse, his expression was calm. To Your Majesty, the fetus of the imperial consort is developing smoothly. The Empress Dowager and Ji Yuaning exchanged a glance, both seeing shock in each other's eyes. That's impossible, Dr. Sunday. Do you really dare to fabricate such things? I can't help but grumble in my heart. With my and the tyrant's relentless efforts, I'm already pregnant, right? I and the tyrant deliberately set this up. If we didn't actually drink the poison, how could the person who hid the poison from behind us appear here? It seems that all those who had disloyal intentions have now come to light. The Empress Dowager murmured to herself, How did you get any offspring? When you were young, I clearly. Just as she was about to finish her sentence, the Empress Dowager quickly stopped herself. I sighed inwardly. It seems that the queen poisoned the tyrant from a young age. Thankfully, I have a natural constitution that allows me to give birth to children, even if I'm weak. The Empress Dowager clamored that the famous Dr. Sun was lying, and refused to believe it. Xiaoming sneered in the darkness, Someone, please bring Princess Chao Tai in here. Let's verify her identity for Empress Zhao. Princess Qiao Qiao was the aunt of Xiaomingya. She was the aunt of the former emperor. She never married, and she cared for the members of the royal family. She had great prestige among the royal relatives. Princess Qiao walked in, glanced at the Empress Dowager briefly, then extended her hand to me. Good child, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. Let's go into the inner room together. With the proof from Princess Taro, None of the officials in the court dared to question it anymore. When Princess Qiao left, she gave the Empress a stern look. This royal family belongs to our Shao family, not to your Wang family. The Empress Dowager turned pale, and she didn't dare say anything more. Xiaoming looked at my belly with affectionate eyes, as if he were looking at some precious treasure that had been diluted over time. I declare that, immediately after the birth of the child of Princess Zhao, he will be made the crown prince. Meanwhile, Princess Zhao will be honored with the title of queen. The grandson of the Ruyang king's family should be returned to his rightful owner. The Wu king wants to become the retired emperor. Why doesn't he have a son of his own? Does the queen refuse to have children? Those officials who caused chaos today under the leadership of the Wu king, who pays them their salaries? Those who were involved in today's events will be dismissed from their positions and sent to the prison to wait for judgment. King Wu looked at Ji Yuaning, his eyes flickering with a hint of resentment. Xiao Mingye sent his secret agents to the Wu prince's palace. When the Wu prince returned to his residence, he had several concubines with him. The Wu prince's wife was forced to kneel at the door, but none of them became pregnant. Xiao Mingye smiled. When he turned to look at me, his expression became even more gentle. Zhao Zhao, with your presence, I am truly fortunate. On this day, before the morning court at night, Xiaoming saw that I was sleeping peacefully, so he ordered the palace servants not to wake me up. I smoothly turned over, and hugged something soft and warm. When I opened my eyes, it was actually the King of Wu. When he saw that I had awakened, he quickly covered my mouth. Don't shout. If you keep shouting, your reputation will be lost. I watched calmly as my husband from this previous life stared at me greedily. There was not a single ripple of emotion in my heart. The King of Wu is a timid person. He always stays behind the Empress Dowager and Ji Yuaning, so he doesn't have the courage to harm me right now. Both of us are daughters who care about our family. So why can you carry my brother's child, while Waning can't carry my child? It must be because Waning's bloodline is too lowly born. Zhao Zhao, you should marry me. Let's have a son together, and then we can both become powerful. I can be the emperor, and you can be the queen, isn't that great? I was stunned by the intelligence of the King of Wu. Is it possible that if Ji Yuaning marries a normal person, she will be able to have children? Perhaps the real problem lies with you, King Wu. I sneered. It's definitely not a good idea. After I give birth to the emperor's child, I will become the queen. Why should I be your queen? King Wu smiled in a strange manner. Let me tell you a secret. The Empress Dowager has been poisoning the concubines in the palace. My brother won't survive much longer. After he dies, do you really want to keep his son alive? I know you don't like Wan Ning. But if you agree to betray my brother and follow me, I will kill that woman. Just give in to me. I rolled my eyes and said, how can a toad ever see itself in the mirror? Only when I'm blind can I recognize you. As I spoke, the King of Wu tried to approach me and do something inappropriate with me. I struggled desperately, and my sleepwear gradually loosened. When Xiao Mingye opened the door, what he saw was just this scene. King Wu was captured, and I lay on the bed, in a disheveled state. King Wu saw Xiao Ming and wasn't angry at all. Instead, he laughed. Brother, Zhao Zhao is my woman. She belongs to me. What does it matter if you are the emperor? After all, we all wear green clothes on our heads, right? Zhao Zhao has given herself to you just because of me. It's all over now. That sickening bastard, the King of Wu, dared to touch me. I'm sure Xiao Mingye will be able to tell that I'm innocent, right? Seeing that Xiao Mingye's face was getting darker by the minute, my heart sank to the bottom of the abyss. Isn't it quite easy to distinguish them? King Wu is so ugly. Why would I bother trying to eat some ugly little toad when there are swans available instead? Xiaoming suddenly laughed out loud. Someone, come here. Escort them down here. I rushed to embrace Xiaoming's arm. Your Majesty, please listen to my explanation. In my heart, there is only you alone. It's over, Xiaoming. You really can't even notice such obvious schemes of sowing discord, can you? Xiaoming looked at me, holding his arm, with a smile on his lips. What are you still standing there doing? King Wu, Xiaoming Chen, broke into the imperial harem, attempted to overthrow the heir to the throne, stripped him of his title as a prince, and reduced him to commoner status. His palace was sealed off, and he was not allowed to leave or enter without permission. The king of Wu looked at it with eyes filled with disbelief. Zhao Zhao, help me. Help that huge monster. Go ahead and die already. Xiaoming suddenly touched my flushed cheeks with his hand. When the noble lady gets angry, it's really quite delightful. I pushed his hand away. There's one thing I need to tell you. You're almost dead. In his previous life, Xiaoming was accused of 10 major crimes at the moment of his death. After the king of Wu succeeded to the throne, he personally listed all of Xiaoming's crimes, thereby forever engraving the name of Xiaoming as a tyrant in history. But after my rebirth, I discovered that Xiaoming was a man of strict discipline and decisive actions. He cared for his people as if they were his own children. The only drawback was his treatment of the concubines, which was quite ruthless. Considering the empress's attitude, he certainly wouldn't dare to favor any of the concubines. Last time, Xu Jiaoyi and Song Jiyu were also taken away safely, and they were well taken care of in the palace, without any harm occurring to them. So, I hope that Xiaoming will be able to survive. Xiaoming's expression didn't change at all. I thought he didn't believe me, so I continued, just now, the king of Wu said that you won't live long. Considering the behavior of the empress, it seems that both she and her son plan to poison you. I hope Xiaoming will believe me. After all, I can't possibly have seen the future after all. I'm just a reincarnated being, after all. Xiaoming Knight nodded his head. I believe you. I'm a bit skeptical. Do I really believe it after hearing such simple claims? Isn't it normal for people to be suspicious by nature? Can such a person really survive? Maybe I'd better run away with the kids instead. Xiaoming suddenly gritted his teeth. I don't trust anyone blindly. I only trust you. Xiaoming told me that he had been cautious since a very early age. He always kept a distance from his concubines. Recently, due to my reasons, even the Empress Dowager became someone he needed to be cautious about. After he repeatedly assured me that he would definitely not die early, I was able to rest assured and carry the fetus in the palace. During that time, the Wu family's palace was very peaceful, and the Prime Minister's residence was also peaceful. Until the day when I was about to give birth, the palace servants suddenly came to report something. My queen is in trouble. Prime Minister Jiyu has rebelled. All the ministers should ask the emperor to act quickly. First, take the head of concubine Zhao and use it as an offering to the flags. When I heard the sounds of intense fighting outside, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my stomach. It was time for me to give birth. What about the emperor? The palace maid was terrified, as if her soul had been taken away by fear. Your Majesty is currently dealing with matters in the former dynasty. The emperor says that the Xiang family is simply a family of officials, and they never treated their wives as daughters. Therefore, now the wives of the officials have nothing to do with the Xiang family anymore. The wife is about to give birth soon. I will go and call for help. Just as that palace servant ran into the courtyard, a sharp arrow struck his back. The young palace girls in the room were terrified and screamed in shock. I tried to stay strong and shouted, "Stop crying. Go to the back room and give birth to the child first. Fortunately, I was in a natural pregnancy state, so the delivery went smoothly, and it was a boy. The door was suddenly kicked open. Ji Yuaning was holding a baby in her arms, looking at me with a cold smile. Sister, didn't you expect it? My father has rebelled against the king. He saved me and your son. The king has already gone to see the queen mother. What if I exchange this deformed child in my hands for your son? Would the emperor be able to recognize him? The maids who served me have all been killed by Ji Yuaning. My son was taken to a separate room by Ji Yuaning. A deformed baby, covered in hair, was placed beside me. Ji Yuaning looked with jealous eyes and said, "Why did you give birth to a healthy, fat son to King Wu in your previous life? Why, after taking countless remedies over the past year, I ended up giving birth to a monster that isn't human or ghost at all? Yes, this monster is my child with King Wu. But now, it's your child. What a terrible thing for you and the emperor to have such a monster. You should step down from power. My son and King Wu will take good care of him. In the future, he will only call me mother." I looked at the long-haired baby beside me, whose breathing was very weak. I sighed. King Wu was born with weak physical conditions. Unless someone who is naturally fertile can be found, it is impossible to produce healthy children. Moreover, Ji Yuaning was so eager for a child that she consumed too many secret medicines, which damaged the fetus in her belly. Xiaoming arrived earlier than I expected last night. I was tied to the bed by Ji Yuaning, who blocked my mouth. The deformed monster beside me was crying loudly. Ji Yuaning saw Xiaoming and laughed. "Just look at this woman who enjoys your favor so much, she actually gives birth to a deformed child. This is surely God's punishment for you." I was so panicked that I couldn't move at all. I was afraid that Xiaoming might, in a fit of anger, throw the child down from the roof and then kill me with a sword. All I could do was desperately shout in my heart, "This isn't our son. Our child was placed in a separate room. This is a monster born of Ji Yuaning and King Wu." Xiaoming took a look at that deformed baby, then sighed and shook his head. "Zhao Zhao, you have disappointed me too much." Ji Yuaning was overjoyed. "Your Majesty, my father has already reached the imperial city with his troops. You cannot harm me. As long as you kill this woman in front of me, I will ask my father to spare your life. After all, you are quite attractive. I've been longing for this moment for 2 lifetimes. I really want to experience it." Before Ji Yuaning could finish her words, Xiaoming already stabbed a sword into her throat. Xiaoming's guards killed all those who brought Ji Yuaning with them. "Zhao Zhao, you have disappointed me too much. How could it be a son? I really wanted to have a daughter first." The torn cloth that covered my mouth was removed. My first thing was to take a look at my son. "How do you know that this strange child isn't one of our children?" Xiaoming looked smugly and said, "Because my child and I are definitely not that ugly." Looking at the corpse of Ji Yuaning on the ground, I said, "Prime Minister Ji Yu rebelled against the king. You killed Ji Yuaning, and now we don't even have a hostage left." Xiaoming laughed softly, saying, "Empress, do you really think that during your pregnancy, I would simply sit around doing nothing? I've long been aware of Gu's disloyalty, which is why I specifically summoned his daughter into the palace. But you and he are completely different from each other. Now, your worthless father has been captured by my men. For some reason, I always feel that Xiaoming seems to know too much." At that moment, a secret guard reported that the Empress Dowager had already ascended the throne in the main hall, along with the King of Wu. After taking a sip of the ginseng soup, my body regained its strength. When I arrived at the main hall with Xiaoming, King Wu was already wearing a yellow robe. The Empress Dowager saw me and Xiaoming, and she angrily said, "The heavens have already sent their punishment down upon you. You too have given birth to a monstrous child. How can you be worthy to be the rulers of this country? My son Chen is the one who truly deserves to rule this land. I called for the palace maid to pick up my son and show him to the officials present. This is the prince that I gave birth to. As for the person who gave birth to the strange child, there's someone else who did that. King Wu, do you dare to conduct a blood test to determine the parentage of that child? King Wu was so frightened that his face turned pale. The fact that I was able to appear here safely means that Jiyu Wanning is already dead. Be bold. Now I am the emperor. Who would dare to take my blood? Even when wearing the dragon robe, the king of Wu still doesn't look like a crown prince. There's no such sense of dominance in his demeanor as there is in my child's father. Xiao Mingya raised the corner of his mouth, and addressed the Empress Dowager and the King of Wu, saying, Mother, I always wondered why, among your sons, you treat me much worse than you do the King of Wu. You ordered people to poison my food, all in order for the King of Wu to ascend the throne. What was the purpose of all this? The Empress Dowager tried to remain calm, but said, because you don't deserve it. You're a tyrant. My son Chen is just slightly weaker in strength, but he still doesn't please your father. But clearly, Chen is far superior to you in every way. If you really understood the importance of filial piety, you would give up the throne to Chen. Otherwise, even in the afterlife, people will say that you're unfilial. This queen is so biased that it goes without saying that she favors the younger son completely. Just because his body is weak, she can easily give him preference over the other sons. Xiao Mingya, I support you in fighting against your ex-wife. Xiao Mingya seemed not to be affected by the Empress' words. He continued, since the last time you tried to abort Zhao Zhao's child, I realized that you actually didn't really like the King of Wu at all. You hated me, hated my bloodline, and hated the former emperor. After investigating several old men who were silenced by you, but who managed to survive somehow, I learned that the King of Wu wasn't even the son of the emperor. He was actually a bastard born of your relationship with others. Just as several elderly officials from the palace were brought forward, the Empress Dowager sat down on the ground, her face full of unwillingness. Why? You are just like your father, who should have died peacefully. So why do you insist on staying alive? Xiao Ming sneered coldly, then hugged me and my son tightly. Because I now have a family. The Empress Dowager and the King of Wu were imprisoned in the prison. The King of Wu was killed by being torn apart by 5 horses. When she learned of this, the Empress Dowager died from grief. During my second pregnancy, Xiao Mingya dismissed all the women in his harem. After all, only the queen can give birth. Those ministers who try to ensure that everyone gets equal attention don't have the courage to say anything more. Queen, this time you must give birth to a princess for me, right? I laughed and said, it's easy to become a princess, but if the princess really wants to eat grilled meat from outside the palace, then her father must personally buy it for her. Xiao Ming got up quietly that night. Before he left, I silently recited these words in my mind. It's better to add more chili peppers to the skewers. Also, the jewelry on my head is getting old. I heard that Juobao Pavilion has new gold crowns available. It would be great if I could buy some of those too. And also, I really want to try the Daohua drink from Zuixiangju. After having children, I'll definitely want to try that too. Xiao Mingya shouted at me from the courtyard, okay, we've received everything. Actually, I'm not stupid at all. I've noticed that Xiao Mingya can hear my thoughts since long ago. Otherwise, how could he always be able to guess what I'm thinking? But I'll refrain from exposing this secret. After all, between husband and wife, there's this little telepathy thing. It makes life much more enjoyable, you know. Later, I gave birth to 4 sons and 3 daughters to Xiao Mingya through good fortune. Xiao Mingya then worked hard to make the country prosperous and strong. When the prince grew up, he began to rule in person. I and Xiao Mingya traveled to various countries together. Later, people often noticed that even though I didn't say anything, Xiao Mingya always took the time to satisfy me in a very considerate manner. Everyone praises him. Look at how attentive the former emperor was towards the Empress Dowager. The first fascinating story is now complete. Don't leave now, let's move on to the second story. On the day of my marriage, my elder sister tricked me into exchanging our wedding sedan chairs. I became a stepmother for someone else, while she married a top-ranked man. When we meet again, my elder sister will be pregnant with 6 children, while I and my stepson will continue to argue constantly. Watching my sister, who was laughing triumphantly after successfully stealing things, I also laughed. You assume that the calamity is being brought eastward by some means. But how can we be sure that no one is actually helping to push the water in that direction from behind the scenes? Get out of here. I don't want you to be my mother. As soon as I got off the sedan, a rotten egg was thrown right into my face. I was stunned for a second. As I felt the mucus dripping down from the red hood, I immediately decided to take off that hood. But the maid, Chun Kin, stopped me from going ahead. Lady, this is not proper behavior. Only your husband should remove the veil from your head. I remained silent for a moment, then suddenly pushed her away, removing the red hood that blocked her view. Pointing at the red cloth on the ground, which was soaked with foul mucus, I sneered and said, "Do you want me to wait in the bridal chamber all night, wearing this thing on my head? Or, is there anything that you don't want me to see?" I dare not do such a thing. Chun Kin collapsed to her knees with a thud. And the boy who just smashed my eggs also came over and stared at my face again and again. He wondered, "Aren't you Qiao Zhenju?" I glanced at him, then looked at the plaque on the mansion. It read, General's Mansion. I am Qiuzheng Mingzhu, Sister Qiuzheng. Is this the general's residence? But the boy didn't answer me. A smug expression gradually appeared on his face. Ha ha. A bunch of idiots. The bride was carried to the wrong place. It can't be done. I'll go tell my father. Get rid of you, you bunch of idiots. Chun Kin stared at the boy as he ran away. A hint of annoyance flashed in her eyes. She was about to stand up again, but I pressed her shoulders down firmly. This movement made her shiver with fear. Chun Kin, if I remember correctly, the general's mansion is the place where a sister should go. Meanwhile, my bridal sedan will be carried to the mansion of the top scholar. Lady, I am illiterate. I really don't know anything either. I sneered, then looked at the group of people who were accompanying the bride. They were also trembling with fear. I'll ask again later. You all should go and inform my father and the Lu family immediately. Everyone nodded in agreement, but their movements were slow and deliberate. I gradually began to understand things better. After a short while, the sound of strong footsteps could be heard. Since she was wrongly carried here, we really should hurry and send her back. The impatient voice suddenly stopped. My head tilted forward, and I met the eyes of the master of this mansion, General Pei Shu Pei. His gaze at me was somewhat dazed, and there was a flicker of admiration in his eyes. I also took a careful look at him. Pei Zun was several years older than me. Today was clearly his wedding day, yet he seemed to have just returned from some place. He was wearing armor stained with blood, and his entire body exuded a fierce aura. To be honest, if I could choose, I really wouldn't want to spend time with such people at all. Dad? Hurry up. Get her out of here. The little boy just now rushed forward and shook. Pei Shu responded indifferently, his gaze once again falling upon me. I gave him a slight smile in return. He stepped forward a few steps, his gaze burning brightly fixed on me. Are you the 4th daughter of the Qiao family, Qiao Mingzhu? I was about to bow and respond, when suddenly a servant ran over to me urgently. General. Someone has arrived at the... Upon hearing this, Pei Shu lowered his eyes, suppressing the emotions that had flashed through his mind just moments ago. Since they have sent people here, let's take advantage of this favorable time before it passes, and quickly retrieve the bridal sedan chair. I let out a sigh in my heart. This sedan chair seems to be irreplaceable now. The Zhuangyuanfu isn't much closer than the Jiangjunfu. Logically, my elder sister should be the one who will marry into my marriage, right? The fact that the... Sure enough, the servant said anxiously. General, the people they sent said that the bride and groom have already entered the bridal chamber. Since things have come to this point, it's better to go along with the plan. Maybe it's even a better fate for both parties if they end up marrying people who are not suitable for each other. This is absurd. Pei Shu frowned. How can such a serious matter be handled in such a childish manner? Lu Jingyan is skilled at writing good articles, but does he really have such a poor judgment? He turned to look at me, his tone slightly hesitant. Miss Mingzhu, do you have any ideas? I wiped away the tears at the corners of my eyes, pretending to be a weak and helpless person. As a daughter of the family, I must follow the arrangements made by my parents. I already sent someone to inform my parents about the marriage arrangements. I suppose they should be here by now. As soon as the words were spoken, Pei Qian sneered, "What a nuisance. The Qiao family keeps coming and going, taking up so much of our time. My stomach is practically falling apart from all this noise." I took out a small piece of cake from my bosom, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and gently unfolded the handkerchief to hand it to Pei Qian. My voice was gentle. This is something that my grandmother prepared for me, in case I get hungry while waiting in the bridal chamber. If the young prince doesn't mind using it, then please take it and use it to fill your stomach. Pei Qian opened his eyes wide in surprise, and Pei Shu also showed a hint of admiration in his eyes. But in the next instant, Pei Qian's expression once again turned arrogant. He suddenly waved his hand, causing the cake in my hands to fall to the ground. Who would eat something so dirty? Get out of here. After scolding, he ran away. Damn it. Pei Shu was clearly also annoyed. Just as he was about to scold them, another servant rushed over. General. There's some news from the Qiao family as well. What do you mean? It's the same over there. I hope that our Lord will just accept the mistake as it is. Oh, and they also said. The servant looked at me with hesitation. They said that if there were no mistakes, a good marriage like this one in the general's household wouldn't even come to a common daughter. Pei Shu was surprised. What kind of marriage can be considered good in my situation? Surely, any family that cares about their daughters would rather not marry their daughters to me. In his gaze, there was a hint of pity. Miss Mingzhu, if you have any thoughts or ideas, you can express them freely. I, Pei Shu, will never press you for anything. I feigned being dizzy, slipped on my feet, and was about to fall when Pei Shu caught me in his arms. Their bodies were pressed together. I looked up, looking at him with a pitiful expression. The general is so brave and outstanding. I know that my status is not worthy of you. But with such an accident happening today, if I were to be sent back home, I would surely become a laughingstock in the entire capital. I would never be able to find another suitable partner again. If you don't mind, I would be willing to follow you. I closed my eyes half shut, my cheeks turning red. Pei Shu's throat moved slightly. Suddenly, he picked me up with great force and rushed towards the bedroom. The maid cautiously asked, "Be careful. General, does Miss Pearl also become the chief wife and enters the palace as such?" Pei Shu said solemnly, "From now on, Qiao Mingzhu will be the chief wife of my military mansion." With that, he kicked open the door to the room. As the door slammed shut, I caught a glimpse of a sly smile at the corner of Chuanchin's lips. After that ridiculous night, Pei Shu had to get up early to inspect the training ground. In a daze, I heard him whisper instructions. Don't disturb her. Let her sleep enough before waking her up. A subtle sense of unease arose in my heart. As soon as I heard that he had left the mansion, I immediately got up and started moving forward. The maid who serves the general is named Xiao Kui. She is very quick and efficient, but she always has something to say. Lady, those maidens who accompanied you to your home are really too lazy. That one named Chunkin, who seems to be your personal maid, doesn't seem to care at all on such an important day. She is still sleeping instead of helping you at all. I gave a simple smile, without saying much. Instead, Xiao Kui became even more upset with me. Pei Shu's parents passed away when he was still young. Since I have no in-laws to take care of, he spends his days working from morning till night. All the affairs of the mansion are entrusted to me for handling. Within less than a month, I have taken control of all the responsibilities related to managing the general's household. Except for Pei Qian, who remains stubborn, everyone in the general's household now follows my orders. Pei Shu was surprised when he saw that I managed to arrange everything so well. I smiled secretly in my heart. After all, the general's residence is small in size. Even if there are a few beautiful maids who have some thoughts of their own, they still wouldn't be enough to fill the space behind the Qiao family's house. Let's not even talk about my previous life. I have experienced the cruel struggles and conflicts among people, countless times. I woke up from a terrible nightmare. My elder sister and Pei Shu were engaged in childhood. However, when Pei Shu was young, he went on a journey with his father. After several years, he returned to the capital and was given a title. As a result, he had one more child. It is rumored throughout the capital that that child was born from the union between Pei Shu and a military prostitute. His legitimate sister is undoubtedly disgusting and unwilling to remain the stepmother of such a disgraceful woman. However, since Pei Shu now holds a position of great importance compared to the Qiao family, even if his father and legitimate mother truly love him, they still dare not cancel the engagement. That's why they came up with the idea of exchanging wedding carriages. Their eldest sister got married to the top-ranked scholar, Lu Jingyan, long ago. His family was poor, so naturally, he would prefer to marry the daughter of the Qiao family over me. In my nightmare, in my past life, I noticed something was wrong with the bridal sedan early on. I made a scene and managed to get it replaced back. So I don't understand where this sudden resentment and disgust towards me came from, by Lu Jingyan. I only knew that he started to act in a way that was completely unacceptable from the second day on. He kept bringing my concubine and other women into the house, forcing me to be involved in endless conflicts within the household. I was transformed from a naive young girl into a bitter and resentful woman. Until I realized that I was pregnant, thinking that finally, all my hardships were over, and I had a foundation for the rest of my life. When I rushed to the private villa of Lu Jingyan to give him a surprise, I found that he and his elder sister were lying together, both looking dazed and confused. I was panicked and tried to run away, accidentally stepping on a branch, causing a sound. The two of them immediately became alert and noticed me. Her elder sister cried out in fear, "Jingyang, we must not let General Pei know about our situation." Thus, Lu Jingyan stabbed through me with his sword. One death, 2 lives lost. After waking up from that nightmare, the first thing on my mind was to end my marriage with the Lu family. But both my father and my legitimate mother strongly disagreed with this decision. They said that I was too naive and ignorant. Even my grandmother, who was closest to me in the household, tried to persuade me against this decision. I once comforted myself, thinking that if everything were just a dream, then the things I worry about won't actually happen. However, the events from my past lives begin to reappear one by one. My elder sister insisted on getting married on the same day as me. She often whispered secrets to my personal maid, Chunkin. When Lu Jingyan came to the Qiao family's residence, he exchanged glances with my elder sister. I finally became certain that it wasn't a nightmare, it was my terrifying past life. Since I can't avoid being married anyway, this time, I'll just go along with the situation. I'll do what they want. In my previous life, my elder sister married Pei Shu, but their marriage was not happy at all. She constantly argued with Pei Qian day and night. But I also wanted to try. Even if it wasn't happy at all, could I really end up with a death and a loss of life? And their older sister, along with Lu Jingyan, these two lovers who are completely in love with each other. In this world where there is no obstacle in their path, where will they end up? While I was thinking about these things, there was some noise outside. It seems that Pei Qian is trying to catch birds again. I had no choice but to walk out into the sunlight, and called out to the tree, "Xiaotian, have you finished your homework for today?" Pei Qian became impatient and shouted, "It's not your concern." Yes, I don't need to worry about that. But when your father comes back later to check your homework, it won't be me who gets punished. Do you find this annoying? I just don't like reading at all. Ha, surely your grades aren't good enough. Otherwise, why would your father hate you so much? Shaokui was startled and tried to stop him with a voice, "Young master. Please don't talk nonsense to the lady. What's the matter with these nonsense claims? In this household, my father is the most important person. She's just a second-rank figure after him. What does she mean to us?" Xiaotsui looked at me with a worried expression. "Madam, children don't always speak what they mean. Please don't take it to heart." "It's not a problem." I smiled faintly. What he said isn't wrong either. I really don't know whether Pei Qian is just talking nonsense to humiliate me, or that he has noticed something from the attitude of the Qiao family during that incident involving the exchange of wedding cots. My father really despises me. Among all my daughters, I am the one he dislikes the most. Back then, my mother was merely a maid who served my grandmother. He forced her to act inappropriately after getting drunk. After I was born, my father not only refused to recognize me as his daughter, but he also suspected that I was the product of an affair with some stranger. In desperation, my mother threw herself into a well and took her own life. Only then did my grandmother become furious and take me back under her care. So, when my elder sister didn't want to marry into the general's family and become a stepmother, my father naturally became the first to target me for advantage. He completely ignored the fact that I wasn't yet at the appropriate age to get married. He also completely ignored the fact that Pei Shu was several years older than me. Who does she count as? How about I ask you, who do you count as? The second son of the general's family. Suddenly, Pei Shu's voice came from behind me, bringing me back from my thoughts. "Dad," Pei Qian slowly descended from the tree. After a few words of advice, that kid just pouted and went back to his room to do his homework. I was about to reach out and pick up the coat that Pei Shu had taken off, but he suddenly picked me up and walked briskly towards the bedroom. There was laughter coming from behind me, coming from the maids. After the moment of panic, I immediately wrapped my arms around his neck, adopting a gentle and compliant posture. Pei Shu is always busy with military affairs. He is already over 30 years old, and he also has a child. I never thought that he could be such an energetic person before. But anyway, it's important to seize the opportunity when he isn't yet tired of me. When our feelings were deep, I leaned against Pei Shu's ear, speaking in a soft voice. "General, according to the rules, after a daughter gets married, she is supposed to return to her home with her husband. Do you have any free time during these days?" Pei Shu remained silent, simply watching me. With his current status, it's natural that he doesn't bother to handle those formalities with the Qiao family. In his previous life, Peishu never accompanied his elder sister back to the wedding site at all. I still forced a smile on my face, but in my mind, I was thinking of other ways to deal with this situation. Suddenly, a heat appeared between my eyebrows. Peishu dropped a kiss on her cheek and stepped back. I was careless. I won't bother you today. Tomorrow morning, let the servants prepare the gifts. I will go with Chiana to see you there. I thanked him repeatedly. After Peishu went to sleep, I touched my forehead with my hand. My heartbeat suddenly became a little faster, though not as quickly as usual. On the second day, when I returned to the Kiao family's residence, I didn't know whether it was a coincidence or if I had heard rumors in advance. My elder sister and Lu Jingyan were also there. They were chatting enthusiastically with my parents in the front hall. As soon as we noticed that Pei Shu and Pei Qian entered the room, our father quickly stood up to greet them, and ordered the servants to bring 2 chairs over. Pei Qian looked around the room in a strange manner. "Mom, why don't they bring you a chair for you to sit on?" The entire room fell into silence instantly. I was also torn between laughter and tears. It was the first time in my life that Pei Qian called me mother under such circumstances. "Why don't you bring me a chair to sit on?" Of course, it's because my father always ignores me as a common daughter of his family. With this word from Pei Qian, he suddenly woke up from his sleep. After all, now I am also the wife of the general's mansion. He quickly ordered again, 3 chairs. The 3 of us finally took our seats. My elder sister had a mysterious look in her eyes. She gently stroked her slightly rounded belly. "Little Pearl sister, having a son is indeed a great comfort. I hope that my child will also be a good son who will be obedient to his parents." Her words undoubtedly imply that Pei Qian isn't my real father, and that I'm merely serving as a stepmother to someone else. I was about to say something sarcastic in response, but unexpectedly, Pei Qian spoke even faster than I did. Do you really think that having a daughter means she isn't worthy of respect? Did you yourself never show respect to your own daughters? That's why you have such opinions?" His elder sister's face turned cold, and Lu Jingyan also slapped the table loudly, saying, "Young prince, please be careful with your words. It seems that your father's military academy places great emphasis on martial arts, and thus neglects the education of scholars in matters related to etiquette. Pearl is your auntie, how can you speak to her in such a manner?" Pei Qian pouted, while Pei Shu smiled faintly as he took a sip of tea. At this moment, Lu Zhuangyuan actually starts to talk about etiquette and manners. On the day of their wedding, it seems that the Lu family didn't even have a proper ceremony at all. They simply followed the traditional rituals of the Zhou dynasty. Did they know about these rituals back then? Lu Jingyan was instantly speechless. Pei Qian also grunted, "Uncle, do you really not see well? My mother is much prettier than your aunt. How can you even mistake the bride in the bridal chamber? Or maybe, you did it on purpose." Her elder sister was so angry that she could hardly control herself. This was probably the first time she had ever experienced such treatment in her own home. The mother-in-law quickly pushed her husband away, indicating that he should say a few words. Just as the husband was about to speak, Pei Shu said, "I heard that my father-in-law also loves tea. Last day, His Majesty gave me some rainy dragon well tea. Today, during the returning ceremony, I also asked to bring some of that tea with me. I hope that my father-in-law won't mind it at all." Who would dare to insult General Z? So, Dad didn't dare to say anything more. A servant came in and reported, "The old lady has arrived." The awkward atmosphere in the room finally eased a little. My elder sister also seemed to calm down a little. Seeing that my sister is now in a relationship with the general, I can finally rest in peace. But still, My sister needs to be more careful in the future. The general isn't concerned about such trivial matters. I wonder if there might be some other son of a dancer or maid in the future. Tilda, what a memory I have. I actually forgot that my sister was born from a maid. Hee Tilda. Pei Qian sneered, Auntie, you should worry about yourself more. Who knows what kind of situation your uncle might bring back one day. Before you get married, I saw your uncle fighting with a woman on the street. That woman kept saying that she was his childhood sweetheart from the countryside. His sister immediately became angry and glared at Lu Jingyan. He hurriedly explained, Shenji, that was just a neighbor of mine from the countryside. Pei Shu sneered. Neighbor? But how do I know that that was actually the lady who was once engaged to Lu Zhuangyuan? The eldest sister clenched her fists, ready to ask more questions, but the grandmother had already arrived at the door. As everyone stood up to give their respects, my grandmother suddenly waved her hand at me. Pinnacle, come here. Grandma forgot to give you some of the dowries. I walked out of the house with my grandmother, and behind me, my elder sister's voice sounded filled with indignation. Every time my grandmother got anything nice, she would give it to Mingzu. How could she forget that I am the legitimate daughter of the Qiao family? My grandmother turned around and smiled helplessly at me, indicating that I shouldn't be in the same situation as her. I went with my grandmother to the pavilion in the back garden. She took out a gold bracelet with phoenix patterns from her sleeve and handed it to me. Pearl, how are you doing at the general's residence? Have you encountered any difficulties? Everything is fine. Pei Shu is very considerate towards me. Pei Qian is a bit more impulsive, but he isn't actually difficult to handle. Grandmother, this gold bracelet was given to me by the Empress Dowager back then. The dowry you gave me before was already much more generous than that of my sister. I really don't feel like accepting another bracelet from you. But my grandmother insisted on putting it on me. I sighed. Grandmother, you also know about the matter of changing the bridal sedan, right? The grandmother looked quite remorseful. I smiled and said, how could I possibly resent my grandmother? She was the only person in the Qiao family who treated me well. No matter what happens, I will definitely repay you in the future, and show my gratitude to you. But now, I am also the head of the general's household. Compared to the Qiao family, I will naturally prioritize the interests of the general's household in the future. My grandmother stared at me for a long time, and then she also sighed. I know that our bond as ancestors and descendants has gradually become weak since the moment I married off. In my previous life, I suffered greatly from the troubles in the private affairs of the Lu family. I repeatedly pleaded with my grandmother, hoping she could help me persuade my father to agree to my marriage. But my grandmother always told me to consider the bigger picture. I know that she feels pity for me, that she understands me. But in her role as the head of the family, the dignity and reputation of the Qiao family are far more important to her than anything else. After talking with my grandmother, I decided to call for Pei Shu and Pei Qian to come along with me. My elder sister was the first one to stop me on the way. She stared at the gold bracelet in my hand, and said with hatred in her voice, my grandmother actually gave you this bracelet. Qiao Mingzu, don't be too proud. It's not easy to be a stepmother for someone like Pei Qian, who is nothing more than a lowly-ranking military prostitute. I caught a glimpse of a small figure hiding in the corner. I said with a smile, I am just a servant's daughter, wouldn't it be perfect to serve as a nanny for a soldier's concubine? A person's status or rank is never determined by their ancestry. Although Pei Qian has some childish tendencies, he is just as brave and responsible as his father. Even if I never have my own children in this life, I would still be satisfied if a true man like him would call me his mother. My elder sister was completely speechless. I continued to provoke her, it's better for you to go back and investigate the matter related to the Lu family's green plum. After all, But one day, if Lu Jingyan brings a child back home, will you still be his only mother? Will you still be the only female head of the Lu family? Don't let people laugh at you later. My elder sister's face was pale as white. She didn't even have the time to retort before she turned around and left. I smiled slightly. On the carriage that led back to the general's mansion, Pei Qian kept peeking at me from time to time. When I asked him what was wrong, he finally took out a handful of sugar from his pocket. Just now at Kiao's house, it tasted so good that I had to insist on getting a whole handful of it. You also eat some? Mom. I smiled as I took it over, and after unwrapping it, I gave him a small bite first. Pei Shu watched this scene, and a look of relief appeared in his eyes. He sat closer to me, ready to take my hand. But I turned my face away and avoided him. Pei Shu was momentarily stunned. He exchanged a look with Pei Qian, and Pei Qian also seemed very confused. Along the way, I continued to chat and laugh with Pei Qian. However, I ignored Pei Shu completely. When we arrived at the general's mansion, Pei Shu went down first and tried to help me. But I still ignored him and continued on my way into the mansion. Behind me, I heard the father and son whispering to each other. Dad, why did you make Mom angry? I don't know. After finishing dinner, I went to the study on my own. After a while, Pei Qian gently knocked on the door. Mother, it's me. Xiao Qian? Is there anything you need to talk about? After Pei Qian entered, he walked over carefully and began to apologize right away. Mom, I've reflected on myself. I was actually deliberately stubborn back then. I read about the characters in the storybooks, and they all seemed so terrifying. But you're completely different from those characters in the storybooks. I will never be naughty in front of you again. I will study hard and make progress in life. I touched his head and said with a smile, good boy. But his eyes still seemed melancholic. Pei Qian immediately noticed this and asked again what happened. I remained silent for a while, then admitted frankly, since returning from Kiao's mansion, I've been thinking about what those people said there. It really made me feel sad. Pei Qian gritted his teeth for a moment, then suddenly said, Mom. Then you should have another child with Dad. In that way, you won't feel sad anymore. I definitely won't have any objections. I was surprised. You little one, I'm thinking that having too many children is indeed not good. Not to mention me and Kiao Zhenji, there are always conflicts with other siblings as well. There's already enough of a commotion in the general's mansion due to you being there. I don't have the energy to take care of any more children. Pei Qian said with an embarrassed expression, I see. But I really hope to have a younger brother or sister. Really, I'm already grown up now. From now on, I won't cause any trouble anymore. Let my younger siblings handle those problems instead. I'll teach them a lesson together with you. I laughed at his words. Pei Shu also entered the room. He waved his hand to signal that Pei Qian should leave. Then he sat down next to me and took my hand in his. Pinyin, our family is different from the Kiao family. I'm confident that I will raise our children well. My way of raising children is also different from that of your father. What's more important is how parents teach their children. Don't worry, I will surely raise our children into good people. Pei Shu's eyes were filled with sincerity. I couldn't help but take his hand in return. He leaned into my ear and whispered, to help Xiao Qian realize his dreams sooner, shouldn't we work harder? My cheeks turned red, and I nodded gently. At night, looking at Pei Shu, who was sleeping beside me, a smile appeared on my lips. Do I really not want to have my own children? How is that possible? A little bit of deliberate concession in order to gain this sense of guilt from the larger person. And then there's the promise that they will both take on the responsibility of teaching the child together. Value. A few days later, I went out shopping with Pei Qian. From a distance, I saw my sister, who was extremely haggard and carrying a large belly. She also saw me. Her eyes were filled with anger, as if she wanted to rush over and say something. Pei Qian immediately stood in front of me to protect me. My elder sister glared at me with displeasure, but still left with gritted teeth. After returning to his residence, Pei Qian immediately shared this matter with everyone else. Pei Shu frowned and said, "It seems that the Lu family has been in a rather unstable situation these days. Besides Lu Jingyan's concubine, it seems there are also several other women who are considered his concubines." As soon as Qiao Zhenji got married, she became pregnant. Naturally, Lu Jingyan couldn't stay idle. Pei Qian immediately warned, "Dad, you must not do the same as him, waiting until Mom gets pregnant before going out and stealing food. What kind of person are you when it comes to treating your father as an example? You should also follow his example when it comes to relationships, understand?" The father and son started arguing again. After returning to my room, when Xiaokui combed my hair for me, she said quietly, "Lady, it seems you are indeed smart. You ordered me to find some people who can incite those women of Lu Jingyan to take action." I smiled. What's the point of being smart? It's all just the losses from the past life. Lu Jingyan himself is a man who is too fond of many women. In his previous life, he claimed that he hadn't married the woman he loved. As a result, his concubines and relatives kept bringing women to his house. My elder sister actually believed him and often had an affair with him. Because I haven't managed to marry the woman of my heart, I decide to marry 10, even 100, other women instead. What foolish women would believe such a thing? Xiaotsue once again lowered her voice. "Lady, I only dare to tell you this in secret. The general used to be quite promiscuous in the army. Of course, he will be curious about you since you've just entered his life. But sooner or later, there will come a day when he might start having concubines or mistresses. You should be prepared for that." I smiled and said, "Whether he wants to have concubines, or to be treated as a queen by his wife, I don't care at all. As long as the power to manage the household lies in my hands, that's enough. Xiaokui, you must remember that men's love is unreliable. Money and power are the things that a woman can rely on for a lifetime." Xiaokui nodded confusedly. "You're quite generous, aren't you?" Pei Shu's cold voice rang out. Xiaotsue was so frightened that her face turned pale. I waved my hand for her to leave, and then I faced Pei Shu directly. "What I said just now is all true. I, Qiao Mingzu, do not seek lasting affection or rewards. All I wish is to be respected by the general, just like any other guest. As long as you allow me to remain as the head of the general's household, I will not interfere in any other matters related to love or romance." Pei Shu sneered, "Okay, since you've said that, I'll definitely go find some fun." After he said that, he left. But halfway through his walk, he suddenly turned around and looked at me again. Why show such an unhappy expression to anyone? I subconsciously touched my mouth corner, it was indeed sagging. Pei Shu smiled as he carried me onto the couch. I said awkwardly, "I really don't believe in love that lasts a lifetime. But I believe so. Qiao Mingzu, let's risk a lifetime of time, to see who will be the winner in the end." After the night of joy, Pei Shu gently touched my lower abdomen. I said helplessly, "Just by touching, we can't know anything about the baby. It depends on the will of heaven." "I know." Pei Shu touched me for a while, then suddenly leaned into my ear. "Pearl, actually, Xiao Qian wasn't born to me at all. In those days, in the army, one of my comrades fell in love with a woman from a foreign country. After he died in battle, that woman also chose to die with him. Only the newly born baby remained behind. I opened my eyes wide in surprise. Thanks to the efforts of Pei Shu and me, 3 months later, I was confirmed to be pregnant by the doctor. Pei Qian was very happy. He immediately took me and Pei Shu to a restaurant to celebrate with food and drinks. Who would have thought that on the road, we would encounter something utterly absurd? The eldest sister used a bamboo pole to beat the girl, making her crawl all over the street. "You shameless woman. You tried to seduce my husband. You're also a girl from a good family. Do you have no shame at all?" I quickly covered Pei Qian's ears. There were many people watching nearby. Pei Shu grabbed me by the arm and shook his head at me, indicating that I shouldn't meddle in their affairs. After arriving at the restaurant, I looked out of the window and saw that Lu Jingyan was hurrying over to drag my elder sister away. Only then did the chaos finally stop. Only, I can't help but frown over and over again. If I'm not mistaken, my elder sister's lower abdomen is actually flat. How is this possible? At this point, she should definitely be pregnant in June or July. Seeing my confusion, Pei Shu finally sighed. "I really wanted to hide it from you, fearing that you might worry about it. Last month, your sister caught Lu Jingyan in a secluded cabin in the woods. They were caught having an affair with another woman. During the struggle between the three of them, that child couldn't survive. At that moment, I didn't know what was going on in my heart. Suddenly, I remembered the situation in my previous life, when I was killed by a single sword strike. My hands and feet became cold. Pei Shu warmed my hands for me, telling me not to overthink things or worry too much. I lowered my head and looked at my slightly rounded belly, then sighed deeply. That night, my carriage stopped at a quiet corner of the street. After a while, the car curtain was raised, and my elder sister entered, with a cold expression on her face. "Qiao Mingzhu, why did you act so mysteriously and invite me out like that?" I took out the envelope filled with banknotes from my pocket and handed it to him. "I heard that you went to the Qiao family a few days ago to ask for money from them. Did they refuse?" Her elder sister's eyes suddenly lit up with anger. "What? Are you here to see my tragedy? Qiao Mingzhu, you are now in a wonderful situation. The general loves you, your stepson is obedient, and you're even pregnant. But all these good things that you have, they are all because I changed the wedding procession. Otherwise, the miserable marriage of the Lu family would have been yours instead." As she spoke, her eyes became red again. If I had known it would be like this, I might as well become a stepmother to other people. At least I wouldn't have to lose even my own child. I sneered coldly. Everyone has different personalities. If you choose to be a stepmother, you may not enjoy the same success I have today. Perhaps it will end up being another miserable marriage, isn't that what happens? In her previous life, after her elder sister married Pei Shu, she didn't live a happy life at all. Pei Shu slept in the military camp every night. Eventually, he even brought Pei Qian along with him. He also took 2 other concubines into his household, and no longer returned to the general's residence at all. And her older sister took advantage of these opportunities to have an affair with Lu Jingyan. Thinking about the past and present, I felt a sense of emotion in my heart. Then, I shook the envelope in my hand again. Do I want to do it, or not? My elder sister gritted her teeth and rushed over to take it. I laughed. "Qiao Zhujian, do you know why my parents couldn't even spare a few hundred taels for you?" Her older sister was also stunned, and shook her head in confusion. "Qiao Zubin, even if your parents dote on you too much, do they do so much more than our brothers and sisters? All you ever think about is how you compare with us, common sisters. Why don't you try to compete with those common brothers instead? Yes, compared to us, you are indeed the treasure of your parents. But in the eyes of the males around you, what are you really? Have you really understood your true status in the family? You've been tortured by Lu Jingyan. You cry every day, begging for a divorce. Have your parents ever given you any respect at all? Nowadays, due to your parents not paying enough attention to you, Lu Jingyan has become even more reckless and starts to treat you with even less respect, isn't that so? Her older sister's expression was uncertain, and she fell into silence. My conversation with my elder sister was kept secret from anyone else. After that day, people in the capital gradually noticed that the wife of the top scholar seemed to have changed greatly in her temperament. She became much more gentle and humble, and even took the initiative to help her husband choose wives for him. For a while, it seemed that this couple had truly regained the harmony they had when they got married. However, while the wife of the top scholar seemed to be living a better life, her husband suddenly fell ill. He suffered from constant sweating, sore backs, and weak limbs, and couldn't get out of bed at all. There are rumors in the capital that Lu Zhuangyuan has become too indulgent in pleasures, which has caused him to lose his fundamental principles. And her elder sister never left her side day and night, personally preparing soups to administer as medicine. Every day, she would also go to the temple, kneeling down 3 times and 9 times, and donating large amounts of oil and money. The reputation of this virtuous wife quickly spread throughout the capital. It's a pity that, not long after, Lu Jingyan died without ever recovering from his illness. My elder sister became so distraught on the day of the funeral that she almost bumped into the coffin. When His Majesty learned of this, he felt compassion for her and granted her the title of imperial consort. I heard from Pei Shu that the due date is approaching, and I have been rarely going out these days. Pei Shu continued to apply essential oils on me, while chatting about this matter. Suddenly, he asked again. If you were in Zhou Pearl's position, what would you do? I told the truth, I definitely don't perform as well as she does. I'm much less intelligent than her. But Pei Shu laughed and said, that's because you don't have any kind-hearted friends who can give you guidance. I was surprised. When I met his knowing, smiling gaze, I realized that all of my private interactions with my elder sister had been noticed by this great general. Later, I heard that my elder sister still often visited the Qiao family. My parents even started to give her various hints and signals, hoping that she would support her brothers in the family more often. My older sister also doesn't visit the Qiao family very often anymore. One day, I went back to visit my grandmother with gifts. I heard her sighing and saying that her elder sister was now so disobedient and disrespectful towards her parents. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Soon after, her elder sister left the capital. The last time I heard from her, she sent me a letter, saying that she planned to settle in the southern regions and start doing some small business there. On the day her daughter was born, everyone in the general's residence was overjoyed. Pei Qian even rushed around, competing with the nannies to hold his little daughter in his arms. He patted his small chest and looked at me with a determined expression, promising that he would grow up and study hard, so as to set an example for his sister. I and Pei Shu exchanged smiles. It seems that this little progenitor has begun to show the responsibilities that come with being a leader. With the addition of another young lady in the household, Pei Shu also arranged for a batch of new maids and servants to be brought into the household. One day, I heard Xiaokui teaching these new members. To be a servant, the most important thing is to be loyal. Also, one must be quick and agile in their actions. It's important to avoid spreading rumors or gossip. Otherwise, the little girl asked curiously, what will happen if we don't do it? Xiaokui wore a serious expression and said, otherwise, the lady will send you to feed the tigers. These young girls, still quite young, were so frightened that they became completely chaotic. Only then did Xiaokui laugh heartily, claiming that he had just scared them. Our wife is really great. She must be the best wife in the entire city. I also laughed. This little? But I wasn't trying to scare her at all. Those people who betrayed me back then, none of them ended up anything good. But for these trivial matters, there's no need to tell Xiaoqui about them. She's such a silly girl after all. Once again in the spring, I accompanied my daughter, along with Pei Shu and Pei Qian and their 4 family members, to Lingshan Temple to pray for blessings. As I walked under the locust tree covered with red wishes. Pearl, do you still remember the day we first met? I haven't answered yet. Pei Qian rushed to speak up. I remember. When you saw your mother, your eyes became vacant. I really despised you at that time. Thank goodness you had a good reputation in the army for not being infatuated with women. Pei Shu slapped his forehead. I wasn't attracted to your ugly face at all. A few months before we got married, I went to Lingshan Temple to pray for the emperor's well-being. When I passed by this locust tree, a piece of red cloth fell off the tree branch. When I picked it up, I saw that it was actually a small painting of a woman. While speaking, Pei Shu gave me a shy glance. I exclaimed, "Is it written on that red cloth as well, 'May your heart be like mine, and you will not disappoint the longing'?" Pei Shu also hurriedly said, "Yes." Could it really be those red cloths? When I saw you that day, I just thought there was some similarity between you two. I thought it was just a coincidence. I said, with a red face, "It's me who came here to pray for a good marriage. I hope that in the future, my husband and I will truly understand each other's hearts." Well, then your wish has been fulfilled. Pei Shu smiled. After finding it, I hung that red cloth back on the tree. Maybe it's still hanging there today. Pei Qian became very excited and insisted on climbing up the tree to find that red cloth. Pei Shu also joined in the fun, and together they climbed up the tree, searching for it with great enthusiasm. A smile appeared on my face as I bent down to play with my daughter in my arms. Actually, how can there be so many coincidences in the world? Baby, do you think so too? The tiny baby in the womb naturally doesn't understand what I'm saying. That year, after deciding that I would marry Pei Shu, I waited at Lingshan Temple early, relying on the memories from my previous life. When General Pei passed by the locust tree, I threw a piece of red cloth towards him along with the wind. Watching him pick it up, seeing his admiration for the woman depicted in the portrait. The bride who is about to discover the mistakes in the arrangement is the person depicted in the painting. How can one doubt that it is indeed a fateful union between them? In life, 8 out of 10 times, things don't go as planned. If everything is calculated carefully, it is still possible to make up for at least 6 or 7 points. After all, in this life, I am happy.